Okay, guys, I already posted all of the answers, the worked out solutions in this assignment itself on Canvas, so you can review it. Make sure you're familiar with all the different ways that you can solve equations, okay? Like if I look at number one, there's two things you can do here on number one. You can, one, notice that it's difference of perfect squares. So you can just factor 2x minus 5, 2x plus 5, and then set each parenthesis equal to 0. Or you can say, I'm going to solve by factoring. So I'm going to say 4x minus 25 equals 0. Go ahead and move 25 to the other side. So 4x squared equals 25. Divide by 4. So you have x squared equals 25 over 4. And then take the square root. I did that because I saw they both were perfect squares. So when we take the square root, we have to put plus or minus in front of our answer. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 4 is 2. And there we go. You would have gotten the same exact thing if you went ahead and factored it. So number 2, I have 2 times x plus 1 equals 2 times x plus 3. So this is just a linear equation. It's x to the first power, so I know I should have one answer. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute. 2x plus 2 equals distribute on this side. 2x plus 6. Move variables to one side, constants to the other. So I have 0 equals 4. Is that a true statement? No, guys, 0 never will equal 4, so your answer here is no solution. Make sure if you get an untrue statement, you write no solution. We'll have an example of all real numbers later on as we work through this. All right, so let's look at number 3. We have 2x squared minus x equals 3. Okay, so what can we do here? Well, I have an x squared and an x, so it's a quadratic. I'm going to move everything to one side and try and factor it. So 2x squared minus x, when I move my 3 over, I have minus 3 equals 0. So if it doesn't factor, then we have to use completing the square. So let's hope this one factors. So my factors I'm looking for are of negative 6. What are the factors of negative 6? That multiply to give me negative 6 and add to give me a negative 1. Well, that would be negative 3 and 2. So we're going to say 2x squared minus 3x minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. This is the grouping way. So what can I take out of 2x squared and 3x? I can take out an x, so I'm left with 2x minus 3. What can I take out of, actually this should be plus 2x, sorry. What can I take out of 2x and a minus 3? Well, I can just take out a plus 1, and I'm left with 2x minus 3. So I see I have 2x minus 3 as one parenthesis. My leftover gets its other, so x plus 1. And I set both of those equal to 0. 2x minus 3 equals 0. X plus 1 equals 0. So here I have x equals, move 3 over, divide by 2, so 3 over 2. Here I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, so x equals negative 1. If you wanted to do it the way that I've shown, a little shortcut way, your factors would be x minus 3 and x plus 2. Then you take your a term and divide each. So you have 2x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 1. Either way, you get the same answer. But here are my two answers, guys, to this problem. So now let's look at number 4. All right, number 4 is 2 times 3x plus 5 quantity squared equals 5. All right, so how shall we approach this problem? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get this binomial squared all by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So we have 3x plus 5 quantity squared equals 5 over 2. Now, we've talked about this. You can write out 3x plus 5 times 3x plus 5, FOIL it out, move the 5 halves over and see if it'll factor. With a fraction and all that, probably not. Your easiest way to do this is you have one binomial on one side that is squared and set equal to a number. So just take the square root of both sides. That's the easiest thing to do. So you have 3x plus 5 equals. I physically put the square root sign on, so I need a plus or minus, and this is the square root of 5 over the square root of 2. Now guys, do we ever leave a square root in the denominator? Absolutely not. So I'm gonna go ahead and rationalize. I'm gonna multiply the top and bottom by the square root of 2. So I have 3x plus 5 equals plus or minus 5 times 2 is square root of 10 over 2. Now we cannot simplify that because the square root of 10 is not the same as the whole number 10. So make sure you're aware of that. So now my next step is I want to get x by itself. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have 3x equals, I like to write the number first and then the plus or minus at the end. So square root of 10 over 2. And then the last thing we're going to do is divide by 3. So I'm going to divide this whole thing by 3 over 1. So I have x equals, guys remember, when you divide, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So this is, when I say negative 5 plus or minus root 10 over 3 divided by 3, it's the same as I can write this as 1/3 times negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2. It's probably a little easier way to look at it. So when I multiply here, I have, I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So it's negative 5 over 3 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 6. And that would be your final answer. All right, moving along to number 5, we'll do over here. So number 5, it says 6x squared plus 13x minus 5 equals 0. So this is a quadratic. I have an x squared and an x. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is factor. Hopefully this does factor. If not, we have to complete the square. So 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. What are the factors of negative 30? They're going to multiply to give me negative 30, but add to give me positive 13. That's going to be a positive 15 and a negative 2. So I have x plus 15, x minus 2 equals 0. My a term is not 1, so I'm going to divide both of these by my a term. Excuse me. So that fraction simplifies to x plus. 3 goes into both of these, so it's going to be 5 over 2. 2 goes into both of these, it's going to be x equals 1 over 3. So this parenthesis is 2x plus 5. This parenthesis is 3x minus 1, and we set each one equal to 0. So here you have x equals negative 5 over 2. And here we have x equals positive 1/3. All right, moving along to number 6. We'll do 6 right here. We have 3x squared minus 1 equals 0. Okay, this one isn't like the first one where we could do difference of squares because 3 is not a perfect square. So I'm just going to go ahead and move this over. So I have 3x squared equals 1. And we're going to solve by taking the square root. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So x squared equals 1 over 3. Now to get x by itself, we're going to take the square root of each side. Remember guys, when you put the square root on, you have plus and minus in front. So the square root of 1 is 1. And then we have the square root of 3. You never, ever leave a radical in the denominator, guys, so we have to rationalize. I'm going to go ahead and multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. So I have x equals plus or minus the square root of 3 over 3. Make sure you rationalize denominators, guys. Major thing. Some of us are still forgetting to do that. We've got to make sure that we stay on top of that. All right, moving on to number 7. Number 7 is a rational. So grown-up fraction. So I have 5 over x minus 1 plus 3 over x minus 3 equals 8 over x minus 2. So the first thing we need to do, ladies and gents, is get a common denominator. My common denominator is going to be all 3 of these together. So x minus 1, x minus 3, and x minus 2. So we're going to look at each fraction independently, figure out what each fraction has and what it's missing. So my first fraction has the x minus 1. It's missing x minus 3 and x minus 2. My second fraction has x minus 3. It's missing x minus 1 and x minus 2. My third fraction has the x minus 2. It's missing x minus 1 and x minus 3. So now that we have equivalent denominators, we can get rid of them. We don't have to worry about it anymore. So I have 5 times x So I'll FOIL it in a second. X minus 3 times x minus 2 plus 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 2 equals 8 times x minus 1 times x minus 3. Now we just have a bunch of combining like terms. We're going to FOIL and combine like terms. So x times x is going to give me x squared. X and negative 2 is negative 2x minus 3x plus 6. I'm going to combine like terms here. So I have 5 times x squared minus 5x plus 6. That's my first simplification that I'm going to do there. So now I have plus. I have a 3. So we're going to have x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is minus 2x. Negative 1 and x is minus x. Negative 1 and negative 2 is plus 2. So when we combine like terms, we have x squared minus 3x plus 2. And I have an equal sign, and we're going to do the same thing. X times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Negative 1 and x is negative x. Negative 1 and negative 3 is plus 3. So you have equals 8 times x squared minus 4x plus 3. All right, so we're going to continue simplifying. I'm going to distribute the 5 in to everything. So 5x squared minus 25x plus 30. I'm going to distribute the 3 into everything. So plus 3x squared minus 9x plus 6 equals, we're going to distribute the 8 over here. So 8x squared minus 32x plus 24. Now, all this, guys, is stuff that you all know how to do. You just have to really, really take your time, make sure that you're watching your signs, all that good stuff. So now we're going to combine like terms. X squared is on this side. I have 5x squared plus 3x squared gives me 8x squared. Those are done. I have a negative 25x and a negative 9x is going to give me negative 34x. Then I have a positive 30 and a positive 6 is going to give me plus 36. And then over here I still have 8x squared minus 32x plus 24. And now we're going to move everything. Let's go ahead and move my 8x squared. I'm going to subtract 8x squared from both sides. Well, what do you guys notice happens when we subtract 8x squared from both sides? They cancel. So now this becomes a linear equation. I'm going to add 32x here. Then I'm going to subtract 36. I'm going to get my x's on one side and my numbers on the other. So negative 34 plus 32 is going to give me negative 2x. And then 24 minus 36 gives me negative 12. And then what do? We're going to divide both sides by negative 2, so x equals 6. That's a really long problem. I totally understand that. Now, what do we have to do now? We did all of this work, and I found out that x equals 6. Am I 100% sure that this is going to work? Well, plug it into your denominator. Does your denominator become 0 at any point? 6 minus 1? No, that we're good. 6 minus 3? No. 6 minus 2? No. We're good. So once you get your answer, guys, with a rational, you've got to plug it back in and see if when you plug the number in for x, if your denominator becomes 0 at any time. If it does, then you know, uh-oh, this one doesn't work. It's going to be a no solution. So make sure you check. All right, moving on to number 8, another rational. I'll do it down here. Number 8 is another rational. I see fractions, so I have 2x minus 5 over 4 minus 3x minus 1 over 6 equals negative 13 over 12. Now, 2 ways you can look at this. You can say I'm going to just multiply the whole equation by 12, or you're going to say I'm going to get a common denominator of 12. Same exact thing, but you need a common denominator. So what is my common denominator going to be between 4, 6, and 12? It's going to be 12. So what would I have to multiply this first fraction by to make it a 12? Well, 4 times 3 on the bottom. So I'm going to multiply the top by 3. My second fraction, 6 times 2 would be 12. So I'm going to multiply this by 2. And then I don't have to do anything to the bottom. You could also, like I just said, you could start off here and say, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply this whole thing by 12. When you do that is exactly the same thing that we just did. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then you don't have to do anything with the last one. So we have now just created a little linear equation. 3 times 2x minus 5 minus 2 times 3x minus 1 equals negative 13. So we're going to distribute 6x minus 15 minus 6x, negative 2 and negative 1 is plus 2, equals 13. So combine like terms. 6x minus 6x cancels. Negative 15 plus 2. This should be a negative. I forgot my negative there. Negative 15 plus 2 gives me negative 13. So negative 13 equals negative 13. What happens when we get this number equals a number? It's not x equals. It's not an untrue statement. You get the left-hand side is the same as the right-hand side. That means your answer is all real numbers. That means any number that you plug in for x will satisfy this equation, no matter what. So make sure you guys understand that. You get the same exact thing. It's all real numbers. All right, let's look at number 9. I could do number 9 right here. Number 9 is just a basic linear equation. You want to get x on one side, numbers on the other. So I'm going to add 21 to both sides. So I have 4 plus 1 is 5. 35 equals negative 5x. Divide both sides by negative 5, and x equals what? Negative 7. Simple enough. We hope there's a bunch of those. There probably won't be, but you hope so. Okay, moving on to number 10. Again, guys, this is another rational. So I'm going to do number 10. I'll move over here. We'll do 10. So number 10, it says x over x plus 4 equals 3 over 1 minus 4 over x plus 4. So obviously your common denominator is going to be x plus 4. So the only thing that you have to worry about is that second fraction. To get x plus 4 in the denominator, you have to multiply the bottom by x plus 4, so we have to multiply the top by x plus 4. So now that we've done that, our denominator is the same, we can just disregard it. So x equals 3 times x plus 4 minus 4. So x equals, I'm going to distribute 3x plus 12 minus 4. X equals 3x plus 8, because 12 minus 4 is 8. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So negative 2x equals 8. Divide by negative 2, and x equals negative 4. Now, some of you are going to be really pleased with yourself and say, oh, good, I got x equals negative 4. You're going to circle it and go on to the next one. But what do we have to check with rationals? I have to check to see if the solution that I got, when I plug it back in, if it makes my equation untrue. And watch what happens right here. If I put negative 4 here, what's negative 4 plus 4? It's 0. Then that makes my denominator or my fraction undefined. So this is actually not a valid answer. It's extraneous. So you would cross it off and tell me it's no solution. Make sure you guys do that. That's a really big point of points off if you do not go ahead and check and make sure, because if it's no solution, that's a really big deal. All right, let's look at number 11. Number 11 says 6x squared equals x plus 15. Okay, this is a quadratic. Got to get everything to one side, see if it factors. If it doesn't, we have to use completing the square. So 6x squared minus x minus 15 equals 0. Now, at this point, you can do completing the square or you can try and factor. I always try to factor first. So factors of 6 times negative 15 is negative 90. What's going to multiply to give me negative 90, but add to give me a negative 1 in the middle? Well, that's easy, guys. It's going to be negative 10 and positive 9. So I'll do this one the grouping way, and then I'll do it my little shortcut way. So 6x squared minus 10x plus 9x minus 15 equals 0. So we're going to group. What can I take out of 6x squared and a 10x? Well, I can take out a 2x, and I'm left with 3x minus 5. What can I take out of 9 and 15? I can take out a positive 3, and I'm left with 3x minus 5. So we have 2x plus 3 and 3x minus 5 equals 0. So here I have, on this side, 2x plus 3 equals 0. 3x minus 5 equals 0. So x equals, move the 3 over, it becomes negative. Divide by 2 is negative 3 over 2. Here, move the 5 over, it becomes positive. Divide by 3, so I have positive 5 over 3. And again, if you did it my little way, you would just take your two factors of negative 10 and positive 9. And since your a term is not 1, it's 6, you're going to divide by 6. So when you do that, your fractions become x minus 5 over 3 And here is going to be x over, whoops, no, sorry, x plus 3 over 2. This becomes a coefficient, so it's 3x minus 5 and 2x plus 3 equals 0. And then you solve. Same thing that we got on the other one. All right, let's go to number 12, and then I'll go to the second page. So number 12 is 4 minus 3 over 5x equals negative 6. So we can multiply the whole fraction, or the whole equation by 5 if you want to, or you could deal with fractions. I'm going to go ahead and multiply this whole thing by 5. What I do to one side, I do to the others. This is over 1. This is over 1. So 5 times 4 is 20, minus, my 5's will cancel here. I have 3x equals 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides, and I get negative 3x equals negative 50. Divide both sides by negative 3, and I get x equals 50 over 3. That's a perfectly fine answer, guys. Just because you get a fraction or an odd-looking fraction, no worries. It's the exact same thing. Okay, so here's some extra practice on purely solving by square roots and by completing the square, because you are going to have one question on your quiz that's absolutely you have to solve by completing the square. And you're probably going to have one or two of these square rooting ones. So I want to make sure you guys are all on board with how to do this. When you have a binomial set equal to a number, all you need to do is take the square root of both sides. Guys, when we take the square root of both sides, what goes in front of my radical? Plus or minus. You can simplify the radical here, or you can wait till the end. I'm going to go ahead and add 3 to both sides here. So I have x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 32. And we always break down this radical. So I can break down 32 into 16 times 2. Square root of 16 is 4. So this is x equals 3 plus or minus 4 radical 2. There is your answer. All right, let's look at B. B says 3x plus 4 squared equals 48. Same thing. You have a binomial squared set equal to a number, so we're going to take the square root of both sides. 3x plus 4 equals the square root of 48. I'm going to go ahead and put my plus or minus there so I don't forget. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So 3x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 48. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I have x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 48 all over 3. And the last thing we need to do, you've got to break down that radical. So I can break down 48 into 16 times 3. The square root of 16 is 4. So this is going to be x equals negative 4 plus or minus 4 square root of 3 over 3. And there's your answer. If you want to write it separate, like negative 4 over 3 plus or minus 4 root 3 over 3, you can, but you don't have to. All right, let's look at letter C. I'll do C up here. So C says negative 4 times 3x plus 5 squared equals negative 48. Remember, before you take the square root, you want the binomial that is squared completely by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. So I have 3x plus 5 quantity squared equals negative 48 divided by negative 4 is 12. Now that you have your radical, now that you have your binomial squared set equal to a number, you can take the square root. So you have 3x plus 5 equals, don't forget your plus or minus, square root of 12. We're going to subtract 5 from each side. So 3x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 12. Divide by 3. And we have x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 12 over 3. And the last thing we're going to do is break down that radical. 4 times 3. Square root of 4 is 2. So this is actually x equals negative 5 plus or minus 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Circle your answer. All right, let's move on to D. D says 3 times x minus 1 squared equals 54. Again, you want your binomial that is squared to be completely alone. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 here. I have x minus 1 squared equals 54 divided by 3 is 18. All right, my binomial squared is set equal to a number, so take the square root of both sides. X minus 1 equals, you put the square root on, so plus or minus 18. We're going to add 1 to both sides. X equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 18. And guys, remember, what do we have to do? We got to break that down. 18 is 9 times 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So this becomes x equals 1 plus or minus 3 square roots of 2. And lastly, I will do E over here. So E says negative 2/3 times 2x plus 3 quantity squared equals negative 18. Again, guys, you want your binomial that is squared to be completely by itself. So we got to get rid of that negative 2/3. I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal. So times negative 3 over 2 times negative 3 over 2. So those are going to cancel. You have 2x plus 3 squared equals, this becomes negative 9. This becomes a 1. So negative 9 times negative 3 is positive 27. And now that you have the binomial that is squared set equal to a number, we can now solve by taking the square root. So square root both sides. 2x plus 3 equals, remember, plus or minus, square root of 27. Subtract 3 from both sides. 2x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 27. Divide by 2. X equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 27 over 2. And we look here and we say, wait a second, we can break that down into 9 times 3. Square root of 9 is 3, so this is actually x equals negative 3 plus or minus 3 square roots of 3 over 2. And there's your final answer. So there's extra practice problems there, guys, on solving by square rooting. And now I'm going to do some extra practice on completing the square. I guess I could do all of them. I'll go through it pretty quickly. Okay. So A with completing the square. X squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0. First thing you want to look at is you want your A term to be a positive 1, and it is, so we're good. I'm going to take this 12 and move it over here. So x squared plus 8x plus your big box equals, when I move 12 over, it becomes negative 12 plus the big box. So we take our B term, which is 8, and divide it by 2, and I get 4. So over here, I have x plus 4 squared. That's going to create my perfect square trinomial. Then I'm going to square 4 and put it here and over here in this box. So plus 16 plus 16 is always going to be positive because you're squaring the number. So then we combine negative 12 plus 16. What's negative 12 plus 16? 4. Good. So now we're going to do what to both sides? We're going to take the square root. So I have x plus 4 equals plus or minus 2. Last thing is going to be subtract 4. So guys, you notice here in this case, you have negative 4 plus or minus 2. We can simplify that. Negative 4 plus 2 and negative 4 minus 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. You got two whole answers here. This is what x equals. Whole pretty numbers. What does that mean about your original problem? It could factor. But if it says solve by completing the square, you absolutely have to show all of the steps to complete the square. So just make sure you're checking. If it just says solve, check to see first if it factors. It's easier. All right, let's look at B. 2x squared plus 6x equals 15. Well, first thing we see is, wait a second, my A term is not 1. So how do I do that? I'm going to divide everything by the A term. So I have x squared plus 3x equals 15 over 2, which is fine. That's totally fine. We've already moved the constant over, so no big deal. Let's go ahead and complete the square. So I have x squared plus 3x plus my box equals 15 over 2 plus the box. So you take your B term, guys, and divide it by 2. So what's going to go over here in my binomial is x plus 3 over 2 squared. What's going to go in each box? Well, I have to square this. So it's 9 over 4 here and 9 over 4 here. So before I can go ahead and add these together, I have to get a common denominator. So my common denominator between 2 and 4 is going to be 4. So 2 times 2 is 4. 15 times 2 is 30. So now when I combine, I have 39 over 4. And we do the exact same thing we've been doing this whole time. Now that I have my binomial set equal to a number, I take the square root. So x plus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 39 over 2. And then my last thing is to subtract the 3 over 2. So I have x equals negative 3 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 39 over 2. You can also write this, guys, as x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 39 all over 2. Either way, does not matter. They're both the same thing. Web assign's going to want it split up. We don't care either way on the quiz. Whatever works best for you is fine. All right, let's go over here and we'll do C. What does C say? X squared plus 2/3 x minus 5 equals 0. Ooh, this is a nasty problem. A couple ways that we could do this. You could, some of you are going to say, can we just multiply the whole thing by 3? Sure, you could do that to get rid of the denominator, but then what are you going to have to do again? You're going to have to divide by that because you want your x squared to be positive. So just leave it. If x squared is a positive 1, just work with what you have. So x squared plus 2 over 3x. I'm going to move negative 5 over. It's going to become positive. So take your b term. It's 2/3 divided by 2 over 1. I always write 2 over 1 when I have a fraction to remind myself I need to do what? I need to flip. So when I multiply this, 2 over 6 is just going to be 1/3. So what's going to go in my binomial is x plus 1/3 squared equals, what's going to go in each box? I have to square this. So 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9, so 1/9. And 1/9. So before I can go ahead and combine, I have to change 5 to ninths. Well, common denominator between 9 and 1 is 9. So 1 times 9 is 9. 9 times 5 is 45. So this gives me 46 over 9. So let's take the square root. X plus 1 over 3 equals, I have plus or minus, don't forget, the square root of 46 over the square root of 9 is 3. And the last thing I'm going to do is subtract my 1/3. So x equals negative 1 over 3 plus or minus the square root of 46 over 3. And again, you can write it all together or you can write it separately. All right, a couple more. E. I'll do E and F right here. So we'll do E right here. E has 3x squared plus 6x. I'm going to go, minus 5 equals 0. First thing I notice is my A term is not a positive 1, so I'm going to go ahead and divide everything by the A term. So x squared equals, what am I doing? Doesn't equal. X squared plus 2x minus 5 over 3 equals 0. So now we're going to move that 5/3. So x squared plus 2x plus a box equals 5 over 3 plus a box. So take your b term, which is 2, divided by 2, so I get 1. So my binomial on this side is x plus 1. It's plus, guys, because there's a plus there. Whatever sign is with the b term goes inside the parentheses. Equals, I'm going to square this. So 1, square this becomes 1. I'm going to go ahead and in my mind I can see that 1 is the same as 3 over 3, so we can combine. 5 plus 3 is 8 over 3. So now, again, we have our binomial set equal to a number, so I'm going to take the square root. X plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 8 over the square root of 3. Now, what do you guys notice here? Every single time we've done this, it's been super great that the denominator of this fraction was a perfect square. But it's not right now. So what are we going to have to do? We have to rationalize. We cannot keep a radical in the denominator. So what I'm going to have to do at this point is multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3. So I have x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 24 over 3. And then I can go ahead and finish. Subtract 1, subtract 1. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 3. And then what do we notice we have to do with 24? We got to break it down. Perfect square and a non-perfect square would be 4 and 6, so this is 2 root 6. So let's be careful with how we write our answer. It's x equals -1 plus or minus. You can have 2 root 6 over 3. Okay, you can leave it like that. Or you can say x equals -3 over 3, which is the same as -1, plus or minus 2 root 6 over 3. That's the same thing. Or if you wanted it all together, it would be x equals -3 plus or minus 2 square root 6 over 3. But in order for you to write the whole thing as 1, you have to make sure that this -1, you write it in terms of thirds. So just be careful with that. And then our last one, and then I'll stop yapping. So f, we have -5x squared minus 10x minus 3 equals 0. I have a negative at the beginning, and I also have where a is not 1. So I am going to go ahead and divide everything by -5. Get rid of that negative, guys. We've talked about that a million times. So -5, -5, -5, -5. Remember, you're going through the whole thing. Even though it's equal to 0, you don't have to write it over there. So we're left with x squared. Negative divided by negative is a positive, so plus 2x, and then I have plus 3 over 5 equals 0. So now that we have that all set up, I know I have a positive 1 as my a, which is my x squared coefficient. So I'm going to go ahead and complete the square. Take your b term, divide by 2, and move this over. So I have x squared plus 2x plus my box equals -3/5 plus the box. And what's going to go in my parentheses? Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So x plus 1 squared equals, I'm going to square 1, so it goes here and here. I can see that 1 is going to be the same as 5 over 5, so I'll just go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to combine, and I have -3 plus 5 gives me positive 2 over 5. Again, you have your binomial set equal to a number, so take the square root. X plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 2 over the square root of 5. So same thing is going to happen here that did in the last one, guys. Your denominator is not a perfect square, which means you have to rationalize. You cannot leave a radical in the denominator. So square root top and bottom. X plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 10 over 5. And then we're going to subtract 1. So x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 5. And you can leave it just like that if you want to. You absolutely do not have to write it any other way. If you want to, it would be x equals, you would have to change 1 to fifths. So it'd be -5 over 5 plus or minus root 10 over 5, or you could say x equals -5 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 5. All three of these things mean the exact same thing. But be careful. If you try to simplify, if you try to make things a little different and you get it wrong, you're going to get points off. So make sure your simplification is correct when you do it. Your quiz is on Thursday. It's 9 questions that says solve, 1 that says completing the square. Make sure you come to class today and tomorrow with questions so we can get ready. Okay, guys, this last problem I just threw in here so you guys could kind of see what are these linear equations where you need to work from the inside out. With all these brackets and stuff, we need to focus on the inside. So is there anything to simplify here with 1 minus 3x? No. So let's move out here. We're going to distribute this -2. Everything else is going to stay the same. -5, I have bracket 11. -2 and 1 is -2. -2 and -3x is plus 6x. Close your bracket. Then you have plus 6 equals -9x plus 4. So again, we're going to simplify the inside first. So rewrite your -5 on the outside. 11 minus 2 is going to give me 9 plus 6x. Then I have plus 6 equals -9x plus 4. Now we're going to distribute the 9. So -5 times 9 is -45. -5 and 6x is minus 30x. Then I have plus 6 equals -9x plus 4. So now we can combine like terms here. -45 and a 6 is going to give me -39 minus 30x equals -9x plus 4. So I'm going to go ahead and add 9x here. Add 9x. I'm going to add 39 and add 39. So we're going to have negative 30 minus 9 is negative 21x equals 39 plus 4 is going to give me 43. And then I divide both sides by negative 21. And I get x equals negative 43 over 21. Not a beautiful answer, which is fine, but I want you guys to remember when you have a problem like this with linear with lots of parentheses and brackets and all that stuff, you want to work from the inside out.